Call to order the August 8th, 2023 monthly Board of Directors meeting for the South Cranberry Water and Sewer Authority. And it's at 6:05 p.m. And first order of business is a roll call. Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Commissioner Gooch,
Present.
Commissioner Kuczynski,
Present.
Commissioner McLeod,
Present.
Commissioner Karen,
Present.
Commissioner Way,
Present.
Councilperson McKellar,
Present.
and Councilperson Jordan is not present.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, we'll have our invocation by Commissioner Karen.
If you'll pray with me. Heavenly Father, as we come together this evening to conduct the business of Sigwasa, we hope that you're with us and that you guide our hearts and our minds and our decisions that are pleasing in your sight. Lord, we thank you for those that work for us in the system, those that put their lives on hold with their families or friends when the call comes in, that they're out in the ditches so that the rest of us can have the services we feel we deserve. Father, keep them safe when they're out working. Father, keep them safe when they're traveling. Father, we thank those who are the unseen servants that make our day go by pleasantly. Father, for all those who serve, I ask a special blessing on them. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Amen. And therefore, pledge allegiance led by Commissioner McLeod.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any adjustments to the meeting agenda? If there are no adjustments, then we'll call for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting agenda. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion carries. Review and approval of minutes from the July 11th, 2023 regular board meeting. I trust everyone's had a chance to read over these. Is there any comments on the minutes? Any corrections? If not, then we entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilperson McKellar to approve. Here's a second.
Second.
We got a second in two places. Second by Commissioner Kuczynski. Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Motion carries. Public comments. Do we have anybody sign up?
We don't have any this evening, sir.
Okay. And do we didn't have anybody email either.
No.
Okay, thank you. Number 8, board discussion item. I believe we had one item. On Commissioner McLeod, you brought forth an item you'd like for us to discuss.
Yes, sir. So after a little discussion with Mr. Schroyer about the benefits that they're paying on price wise, and we lost a good employee from Sigwasa due to the cost of benefits, the health benefits. I looked at trying to put a cap on that. I work for another municipality as a full-time job, and our insurance prices are nowhere near the price that they're paying. I believe I saw it $16.44 for a family.
1748. If they get all the options.
And I believe you wanted to refer that to the finance committee.
I would.
To investigate it.
I would.
Mr. Schreier, I think you had talked to me once before about doing a finance committee meeting in September.
Yes, that is correct. And at the conclusion of the discussion, I'm actually going to request this evening during my section to actually have a finance committee meeting in September. So just to give
That's
you an
sooner than
idea.
Yes. Definitely.
If it meets your approval, then we will refer it to the finance committee to discuss it and, didn't have any other, no one else sent in any, discussion items. Has anybody come up with a discussion item in the meantime? If not,
Real quick,
Yeah.
on this one, before we move on, the county shifting, reducing our out-of-pocket expense for those with children and spouses as a retention tool. Just why, sorry, I was reading the numbers, trying to do a little math in my head, and it's one of those unseen benefits when you start totaling in cost of budget analysis, so it's just off cycle, but I appreciate you all sending it to the finance department. Sorry, I blanked on it. Catch up here.
okay, then we'll move on to next item of business. Item number 9 is a water treatment plant valve replacement project and award of contract to Pipeline Utilities. Mr. Shroy, you want to take this, handle this for us?
I sure will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a little bit of background information here. You'll see in your packet tonight, there's a sketch below the text here when we start to talk about the focus of this project this evening. Of course, this is a award of contract for Pipeline Utilities, but you may recall last fall, Saguasa experienced a water main break. It was around Labor Day weekend. And in the picture, you'll see kind of a red mark where we experienced the main break. And you'll see a line that's perpendicular, that's a 16-inch cast iron water line, which tees into that 24-inch line. And that line goes directly to the water tower. Now, when that main broke at that position there, basically we had all the water from the water tower drain out of that pipe and out of that hole very rapidly. So it was 1 million gallons that came out very quickly during that main break. It was several months later that we recognized that basically the flow of that water coming through there, as far as the hydraulic speed and pressure, caused damage to that 16-inch valve that's buried underground. It's very deep. It's in the front yard of the water plant, just as a reference point. So it's in a grassy area. And some of you may have noticed that there's a portion in the water plant field towards the roadway that hasn't been mown. The grass is high. It's because it's very damp there. We can't get our mowers into that area. And that's basically where this valve is, in that area. So we identified that we had a problem there, and our engineering director put together some plans and specs basically to go in and remove that valve. But before we can remove that valve, due to the location of that valve, we actually have to do an insert a valve upstream of this valve location. And the board is very familiar with inserter valves, where you can actually insert in a live main, basically a brand new valve, and control it. So part of this project will be inserting a brand new valve upstream of this existing valve. Once that's installed, we can then isolate the water coming from the tower and also from the 24-inch line. And then we'll actually physically remove the existing 16-inch gate valve and put a straight piece of pipe in that area. As we were looking around the water plants for other opportunities for things to fix as far as infrastructure, we found some additional valves that hadn't been working for a while, or they were so old we were afraid to touch them. Because once you break it, you got to fix it. So we took a look around, and we saw some additional valves that we wanted to work on in this project. Our primary focus, of course, was to remove and replace the 16-inch valve that we just talked about in the field. So we put a RFP together and issued it, and we only received one bid. And that bid was from Pipeline Utilities, and Pipeline Utilities has worked for us in the last several years on many utility projects. The bid included a base bid, and if you look at the table at the bottom of the page on page 13, you will see a kind of like a bid tab there for items such as base bid, remove and replace 16-inch valve and manhole. And then you'll see several alternates, asphalt, remove and replace asphalt, concrete curb, 24-inch diameter insertion valve complete, and removal of existing 24-inch valve complete. Well, we received prices for those, but you can see the quantities and what the project turned into on here, that it escalated from, $80,000 job potentially up to over $500,000. So It's good to get the pricing on this, but it's something that we didn't have on our CIP schedule in front of the board earlier this spring. So we've decided to just make a recommendation, move forward with the base bid item. And we'll speak to that just in a little bit. And then we'll look to get some better design and some work done on these additional valves at a later time. I just don't have that timetable for you this evening. But these valves are located right between the water plant and the clear well. And if you remember from the tour, there's a driveway that kind of separates the two of these facilities. Some critical large valves in that area. So it's one of those things that you want to make sure that when you go in there, you have a contingency plan if things don't go well. And so we decided just to pause, re-engineer this, and then put this out in the future for bids and schedule for work. So we're going to move down that pathway to continue to make the necessary repairs at the water treatment plant. So at this point, the recommendation is to award a contract to Pipeline Utilities Incorporated for the base bid item only, related to the removal and replacement of the 16-inch water valve in the manhole. If the board approves it this evening, the work will be started possibly in 30 days, but for sure be completed within the next 90 days. We're asking for, in the financial section here, our base bid of $79,528 for the project, and I'm asking for a 15% contingency versus a 10%. And some might ask why. Well, we are working with an old system in the front yard of the water plant, and we're not sure if there's more infrastructure in there than what's been identified. So we want to be a little bit cautious here, and just thought we'd add just a little bit more on our contingency here to push this project up. And as the board is aware, we only spend the contingency if we have to, but we like to have that go ahead as we're putting the contract together and looking for the award here. Fiscal year 23-24 budget amendment is necessary for this transaction, and that budget amendment is contained in this meeting agenda. Following, we have another item coming up on your agenda this evening. It's identified as item 11, which talks about our CIP schedule. This item is identified in there on the schedule as well, just from an identification point and a funding point as far as the CIP. So we'll look at that when I get to that item. You can see our strategic plan alignment, and you can also see my recommendation for this item. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board members have regarding this large valve replacement project.
Any questions? Only question I have is, this does meet the bidding requirements for the project?
That is correct.
Okay. So as long as we're on the legal and passing the legal end of it as well as our,
We're good to go.
we're good. Okay, that's if there's any questions, any further questions, then call for motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with Pipeline Utilities for the removal and replacement of the 16-inch water valve project in a not to exceed amount of $91,457, and be given authority to review and approve change orders relating to an unexpected conditions in an amount not to exceed $11,929 without further board approval. And allow the executive director, Sigwasa, attorney, and financial director to finalize and execute a contract with Pipeline.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner McLeod. Any discussion on the motion? Then we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Item 10, fiscal year 23-24 sanitary sewer cleaning and televising award of contract to Vision NC LLC. Sure, are you taking this one for us also?
Yes, that is correct. So it's Mr. Short, Mr. Ballmer evening on items here, just the two of us. So I will take this one and the next one, I believe. So as the chair said, this is award of contract to Vision NC LLC. The board is aware that we do annual cleaning of our wastewater treatment collection system, and that includes 114 miles of pipe total in our collection system. We are required by DEQ, our annual operating permit, to inspect at least 10% or 11.4 miles annually. We inspect the lines, we televise the lines, and that basically helps us not only keep down on roots and keep the water flowing, it helps us identify any pipe defects that we then take that information and build capital improvement projects on it, and it keeps the water flowing for us. The program, the way it's operated currently at Saguasa is that the vendor that we're proposing this evening, Vision NC, only performs 50% of the 11.4 miles. The Saguasa team has a small jetter and a small inspection camera, and they actually perform additional work throughout the year as well. Eventually, we'd like to look at maybe 100% of vendor cleaning, or possibly look at in the future. We've done some analysis of bringing this work in-house by not contracting it and simply buying equipment and having our crews do it, where I think we can increase our production values throughout the year. Regardless, what we're looking at here in our fiscal year budget is an approved budget of $160,000 for sanitary sewer cleaning and televising. In June 2023, I issued an RFP for annual cleaning for over a 2-year period. So basically encompassing this fiscal year and next fiscal year. On June 29th, proposals were opened, and the following 3 vendors provided proposals for the scope of work outlined in the RFP. So you can see in the table associated in the analysis section, we have companies Vision, Dukes, and Bionomic Services Incorporated. You can also see their related costs for the program, pretty much in the low to high bidder state, if you will. And there's a complete bid tabulation in items attached as Exhibit A. So one might ask, why did you issue an RFP and ask for proposals for a 2-year period? Well, the idea is twofold. One is to find out potentially what our prices are for next year for budgeting. And secondly, the fact that we can possibly award the vendor the work next year as well, in the next fiscal year, if they perform satisfactorily and if their prices are still in line. And speaking to that, we are only asking for the board to approve basically this current fiscal year's program. And if we want to move forward with next year's program, that would be a separate ask next fiscal year at some other time. So our schedule is basically following board approval. We'll execute the necessary contract documents. And once again, the budget includes $160,000 for the cleaning program. And you can see the strategic plan alignment that we have for this. And you can also see my recommendation to approve a contract with Vision NC LLC for the fiscal year 23-24 sanitary sewer cleaning and televising program for the not to exceed amount of $160,000. And 2, to allow the executive director, Saguasa attorney, and finance director to finalize and execute a contract with Vision NC LLC. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question.
Sure.
Vision NC, you said we currently use them already
Correct.
to do about 5 miles.
We've used them for ad hoc work throughout the last year. We've also used Dukes, which is a new name, used to be Hydrostructures, and we've also had Bionomic Services working for us. So we've been able to bring them in at certain times to do some pipe cleaning for us, but this is our official contract that we're putting out. Good, all 3 good companies, quite honestly. And you can see that they're somewhat competitive in their pricing.
So they will pick up where it was left off last year.
That is correct. We actually have maps throughout our entire collection area that are target areas. So we move around basically the collection area and do this maintenance where we need it. So obviously we want to get through the entire collection system over a 10-year period. That's the goal.
Okay. Gotta get that fog. I'll move for approval.
Have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Are we gonna sell the video?
Excuse
You
me?
don't want to see the video.
You're more than welcome at any time.
You're welcome to view it privately. How about
It's not a spec.
that? Okay, if there's no further discussion on the motion, then we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. And we'll move on to item number 11, our CIP program schedule amendment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, public, you have a worksheet, basically a kind of a full scale version versus in your booklet here of the CIP, which we're proposing for amendment this evening. And one of the things I want to talk about before I get into the body of this memo is the board will recall during our budget process that we talked a lot about the CIP and put a schedule in front of the board at budget time and actually had you approve as part of the operating budget rates and fees and charges and also the CIP. One of the reasons we did that this year was number one, we've never had really an official CIP in front of us here. It was one of our strategic planning goals to do that. So we're checking the box for that. And secondly, with our USDA application for the I-85 sanitary sewer project, it's required that we have a board approved CIP. So this year, we thought we would couple the CIP with the regular budget documents, which we did. And so you've seen that. And so as we close out the books for the fiscal year 22-23, we end up basically being able to adjust the values for the carryover balance as well as some depreciation. And that's what I have for you this evening to speak about. So just jumping into this memo further, as I mentioned, the board of directors at their May 9th, 2023 directors meeting approved the budget, including the CIP, the 10-year CIP. And at the close of fiscal year 22-23, the finance director determined the actual values associated to the prior year's carryover balance and projected depreciation values. Those values were slightly higher than anticipated and shown in the previous CIPs. And based on these higher values, the carryover balance was a plus $370,000 and a projected depreciation value of $70,000. So we have an updated 10-year CIP for the starting fiscal year 23-24. It reflects a total combined increase of $370,772. So we thought it was appropriate, the finance director and I, that we adjust the CIP schedule and bring it back to the board for approval with the idea that this is our roadmap for projects. Even though we have 10 years worth of projects in front of us, we have 1 year right now of very aggressive projects in front of us to build. We need a little bit more horsepower in our engineering department, but I think that we'll still be able to get some things done this year. So what I did is I went back in and scoured some of the projects and priorities that didn't make it onto the previous schedule. And you can see in the first table, in the analysis section, I've added some project IDs. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects where I've asked to or recommended that we're going to add $20,000 more for SCADA upgrades to equipment. The 16-inch water valve replacement project is the one that we just talked about earlier this evening in item number 9, but I want that to appear on the schedule because we have a budget amendment coming this evening following these items to put that money where it needs to be. I have a Franklin Street lift station improvement project over in the town of STEM for engineering. That's a capacity analysis. And then something I've talked to the board about briefly in the last several months is an organizational wide facility needs study. So those added projects total $320,000. If you take the carryover balance plus depreciation at 370 and subtract the added CIP at 320,000, you know, we've got basically a $50,000 balance at this point. And of course, any money that we don't spend on our schedule just continues to stay on the schedule for CIP. So for example, this water valve project that we have listed $100,000, if we only spend $80,000 on it, that money will remain on the CIP that we can either carry forward or use for other projects. So I've included for you in this packet many attachments, including the prior year or the previously approved 10-year CIP, both in total and just a FY23-24 view. And the same thing as far as the amended section. So that is the document that you have in front of you. If you wanted us to dive into that, I'll be happy to do that further. But my recommendation is that the board of directors approve the amended FY23-24 10-year capital improvement program schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Troy. Any questions, any comments?
Under the water towers, solar mixer replacement program.
Mhm.
Why is the Creedmoor water tower not listed there? Does it not have a solar mixer?
I don't believe it has a solar mixer.
You don't believe it? Do you not know?
Well,
That's
it
what
it has a
the-
mixer, but not a solar mixer. So the tanks have mixers. So this was a program that was put into place several years ago before I came on.
I
board.
remember,
So
I thought that I was
they're-
told that all.
they're yeah, they're actually solar driven versus regular power driven. So this was at the time, and Creemore's tower has been upgraded since these mixers were installed. So it's not part of that program, but
Okay.
it's basically to not replace them with solar mixers, but go basically with a hardwired system, if you will, to upgrade the mixers. The technology has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And it's a little bit more stable for us to go with regular mixers.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Then we entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. The ayes have it and motion carries. And item number 12. Mr. Balmer, you're up to bat.
Oh, I didn't even know he was here.
How many items have we got? Three, so we shall count. Three, where we good? We got three items, all three budget amendments, very straightforward budget amendments. The first one is basically reappropriating any projects that were started in prior fiscal year 22-23 that didn't get completed, that will be enrolled in 23-24. Some of those projects include the PFAS sampling, PFAS support, lead and copper testing, and the wastewater chemical storage tank design to replace those. There's also an SDF study recently approved by the board in the prior fiscal year that's rolling forward. And of course, the remaining project for I-85 that's already been in the design phase. That's being rolled forward based on the capital project ordinance the board has already passed in the prior year. This amendment also appropriates one purchase order that didn't get delivered last fiscal year for some chemicals that came in early July, the first week of July. It also includes a few expenses that are basically reallocating budget to repurpose the administrative office space and some accessories related to computers at the water treatment plant that are being reclassified as supplies. It appropriates budget for pay, benefits, and expenses for the assistant finance position that the board created at the board meeting on June 13, 2023, which wasn't in the original budget. And it unappropriates a small amount of budget from the engineering department for the current vacancy that's there to help offset some of the assistant finance director costs. And I won't read the entire budget amendment, but you'll see that we're increasing revenues for other financing sources by $3,222,697. That's the unexpended ARPA money that's already earmarked for the CDM design study. And we're transferring from fund balance $1,456,042. So we're increasing revenues $4,678,739,000. And we're allocating the expenses for that same amount, $4,678,739. The only thing that I'll point out on that, just for clarification, is that of the budget amendment amount, the only thing that's truly affecting current year budget or current year fund balance are the addition of the finance director, assistant finance director position offset by the engineering vacancy. And I think that net was 67,000. So really, it's only about 67,000 of the $1,456,042 that's really affecting the current year budget. The executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment number 1 as presented.
Okay, any questions, comments from the board? Then we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have it.
Approved budget amendment number 1.
Have a motion to
Second.
approve. Have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Motion carries. Next is a fiscal year 23-24 budget amendment number 2, AI grants.
This one is a good budget amendment because it's appropriating grant money. So this budget amendment, as you recall, we got an AIA quarter grant from DEQ. And that board had already approved that scope for $150,000. We recently received word that we have an AIA sewer grant in the amount of $200,000. Both of those funded by ARPA, so there's no SEQUASA match to those. This budget amendment is appropriating or is reporting the grant revenue to other financing sources for $350,000 and appropriating expenses accordingly in project and studies for $350,000. And the executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve full budget amendment number 2 as presented.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Second. McLean, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Always love getting grants.
Yeah, absolutely. And fiscal year 23-24 budget amendment number 3, capital improvement plan projects.
Excuse me. This one is a similar kind of an administrative budget amendment. Budget amendment number 3 is appropriating the money for the capital improvement plan projects that you just approved a revised capital improvement CIP plan for. This is to appropriate the projects that Scott has indicated may be completed in the first quarter of this fiscal year. Among those are, as you can see in the supporting schedule, the SCADA upgrades at Lake Holt and the reservoir, the SCADA upgrades at the water treatment plant itself, the 16-inch valves that you just voted on in the previous item, the SCADA upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant, and to begin the PFAS testing at the water treatment plant and reservoir in anticipation of design changes. The total of all of those CIP projects is coming in out of capital designated fund balance, by the way, not operating fund balance. We're increasing revenues by transferring from fund balance $399,957 for cumulative effect of all those projects. We are increasing expenses in raw water for $10,000, water treatment plant for $101,457, wastewater treatment facility $38,500, projects and studies $250,000, for a total expenditures increase of $399,957. And the executive director's recommendation is that the board approved budget amendment number 3 is presented.
Do you hear a motion?
Motion to approve budget amendment number 3 as presented.
We have a motion to hear second.
Second.
Second by Mr. McKellar. Any discussion on the motion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, likewise, ayes have it. Motion carries. Project status updates. Back to our executive director, Mr. Short.
Oh, well,
Was it something, was there a question?
there was a question, but we voted now, so it's too late. Because you
Oh.
didn't look at this end of the table.
I didn't.
So I'll ask later.
Okay, well, we'll back up. What was the question?
The 250,000 for the PFAS infrastructure improvement. We don't have any idea whether we're gonna start or do it. We're still testing, right?
Well, I was just, that's a great segue into where I was
Sorry.
going to start. So that is fine. Let's start there. Engineering project updates. I'll continue, but I'll address that first on the schedule. So no fancy PowerPoints this evening. I was a little bit short on time this last week to put that together. Don't look to Crystal.
That's where my eyes went.
Next month, maybe. Okay, so a lot of things to do. So yeah, let's talk about that. The projects we'll talk about this evening are the PFAS project, the I-85 project, as well as the lead and copper, kind of our top 3 projects that we're working on. So in terms of the PFAS, let me roll you back about a year to last summer when the EPA released their MCL numbers for us as far as maximum contaminant levels for PFAS. And the board, remember, those numbers were extremely low as far as their target. Now, there's no law yet for that, but they're working on that. We anticipate maybe by March of 2024 having those values, and the board was responsible in moving forward with starting to do some testing. We had some testing done in 2018, and we decided as an organization to move forward and do testing at our reservoir, basically at Lake Holt. So we started that. The board approved a contract with Hazen and Sawyer to help us with that. And also ECS, I believe, was the company that did the testing for us. So we did that testing for several months, and we got the values back, and we discovered there's no major hotspots in the lake. Basically, it's everywhere. Still the elevated values, if you will. So it's time to conclude the Hazen project with a final report, which we'll probably have in the next 30 days. And we've stopped the testing actually to occur at the lake itself. There's no sense spending more money on that. We know what the results are. So really the next thing that we want to do and how we want to move is we want to actually set up actual bench testing of the water at the facility where we actually do lab work. And we bring in some equipment, very expensive. And some of you saw this when we did the disinfection byproducts project. We have to bring equipment on site and do laboratory work to determine which PFAS removal process works best with the Saguaso water. And if you remember, there's three types of removal process: granulated activated carbon, ion exchange, and reverse osmosis. So what you do next is we come in and we set up this program and we do this analysis at the water plant. And based on that analysis and looking at those values that are returned to us, that starts to drive your design process. So you've got to know basically what you're able to pull out and what those values are, and then do your design. So where we are now in one of the money we put aside in the PFAS item 101-07 engineering design for PFAS removal process, $500,000 was in there. So we've moved some money this year. I think it was the 250, right, Richard? So we basically put over for that. And we're preparing for that next phase. So that's really kind of, if we're looking at, as you would march down the road with this project, we will do that analysis. That will start to drive the design type that we need at the water plant, which will then start to tell us what we need to do and where and how we're going to design this and what the timetable is. And if I recall from one of my reports to the board, we've talked about several ways to administer this construction as well, which could be possibly a design build, which would be a lot quicker than a design bid build. So one of the challenges that we have, or many of the challenges that we have with this project are, we know in theory what's been proposed by the US EPA as far as the values that we have to hit. We don't know what the final numbers are. So we are working towards that initial value set to say that's what we need to be down to. So we'll design for that. We do not know yet when these systems have to be put in place after the final rule. We just don't have that complete guidance yet. So it could be 3 years after the final rule that you have to have this done. I've also heard conversation and read that there may be extensions beyond the 3-year window of construction if you have high PFAS levels. Well, we would qualify probably for that. But so we're doing all that we can do at this point. We've done the testing in our lake. We know what those values are. We're now going to do our plant testing to help devise the type of system that we need for the removal process and the design. And I'm also considering, I was having conversations with one of the consultants today, looking at possibly doing an application for grants through DEQ, through the ARPA for this September, I think is when the applications are due. So if that's the case, that's something that I believe I have to get back in front of the board in September as far as a resolution to do that. But I just wanted to give you an idea of all those moving parts for PFAS as far as that project goes. So we have to answer any questions about PFAS at this point, or where we are in the staging of this. But I mean, this is a run. We're running on this project, obviously, just because of the timetables that we have in front of us. And the cost, I've shared the cost with the board before. We could be looking at anywhere from $5 to $7 to $12 million for this PFAS reduction. So just a heads up. Did I answer your question?
If the administration changes next year, is there a chance that this could all change again?
Which administration are you referring to?
The federal,
I
I know that this president's pushed for the lead and copper, and
there's
first he stopped it, then he started it. And
right. We have change every day, of course. I'm not sure, but we're just gonna keep going steady and try to hit those goals regardless.
yeah, because I think it's best for us to just keep trying to do this for our customers,
Exactly.
no matter what happens.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's our focus.
These are going through a rulemaking process, so it would make it harder to change. They're going through a federal rulemaking process, is my understanding, so it would make it harder for it to be just changed by executive order.
Okay.
Very good. Next project, I just want to roll back to the AIA grants. With even though we were awarded an AIA grant for water, and this is infrastructure related, so this isn't a specific project. These are going out and doing inventories and assessments of our infrastructure, which is something that we need to do. That condition assessment comes back and helps us then to build additional CIPs, basically, and helps us maintain our systems. We have an AIA grant for water and sewer. Richard talked about that this evening. We got awarded for the water AIA last January. I think it's mentioned in here. And midway through the review process, DEQ changed the way that they were doing some internal documents. And they had greater requirements now on their scopes of work and their timelines. And so that was about the same time that we were awarded the sewer AIA grant. So we had 1 foot in the new system and 1 foot in the old system. So we took the opportunity to, and we had to go back and update the water AIA to move forward. So we're about a year behind actually in that project, or will be, unfortunately. Now, I mention that now because at the next board meeting in September, I'll need to bring to you a task order for McGill for them to do the water or the sewer AIA project. So we got the financing out of the way this evening with a budget amendment, and next month you'll see I'll ask the board for you to approve a task order for McGill to do the sewer. Now McGill's doing both the water and the sewer, and then we'll start the projects moving forward. So I just wanted to mention that as well because we did mention AIA. Any questions on AIA projects, inventories?
So I thought that some of the AIA money was finishing the digesters.
No, not the digesters.
And where are we on that?
We have 2 brand new ones and 2 mediocre.
Right.
So that are on, I think they're on the CIP schedule
Yeah,
for us. But our next focus project at the wastewater treatment plant is the chemical
Storage.
tanks.
Oh.
We have 9 chemical tanks that need to be removed and replaced. And that project is finishing up in terms of the design on that. And I just got a probable cost estimate, which is right about $900,000. That's what we anticipate. And that's what you see in your CIP. That project will go out for bid yet this fall, probably be in construction if we can get the tanks quick enough sometime this fiscal year. So that's that project. The other projects I want to talk about are the lead and copper program. Suffice to say, that's about a year-long program. Our deadline for having our program completed is October of 2024. We're right on schedule for that. Even though we've had some blips with some staffing to help us on those projects, everything continues to move at a very good pace. No worries about that. And any questions on lead and copper at this point? No? Okay. The next project and probably the final is the I-85 sanitary sewer project. So engineering and financing, let's talk about that. Engineering wise, I will be receiving in September the 60% design draft, which is right on schedule. So I look forward to reviewing that. And following that, we'll get the 90% design before Christmas this year. So just to give the board an idea how quickly we're moving on that entire project. And the plan sheets are about this thick as far as the overall plans, a lot of detail, which is good. So that's moving along well. I continue to get at least 3, if not 4 calls a week from developers from this area, and that's been occurring probably for the last 4 months or so of interest, knowing when is this project going to be finished, which portions are going first, is it still going to happen? So that's a good thing. In terms of the financing, Richard and I and CDM Smith team and USDA spent about 90 minutes on the phone this afternoon, just getting an update on our application for our loan. We are very, very close to getting approval. As the board is aware, the federal fiscal year begins October 1st. We're hoping to get all of our information in and them to review and award, if you will, the USDA loan to us in this fiscal year. They told us today that's a stretch, that it might go into October, November. They said, don't worry, no issues. We're just telling you there's still a lot of information they need to review based on our application and that we put in. And let me just tell the board, this application is very daunting. It's not a one pager. We have a PER that's over 1,500 pages long. That is part of this, and all kinds of assessments and financials that we're doing. I'm pleased where we are, quite honestly. I mean, I think we had a great goal to try to get this done, and everything submitted to them in August. We still have just a couple of final documents to give to them. And they said they might be able to push it in September. It's basically on them then to take that and move it forward. But I said, rest assured, we'll still be on track here. It might be October, November that you get your approval, but I'm not concerned at this point. Richard didn't seem to be concerned at this point either. So I think we're in a good position. And remember, we're still 2 years out from construction. So there's time. I don't think there's any risk at this point in what we're doing. I think our team has done a fantastic job to get us to this point, considering all the requirements for the USDA loan. That's all I have for this evening, unless the board would like to talk about any other projects that are on the CIP or anything that I missed this evening.
Okay, any questions, any comments?
I have a question, Scott.
Mhm.
How many positions do we currently have open?
I think we have five. I think I have 1, 2, 3 professional staff, our 2 engineers, and our assistant finance director, and I believe I have an operator at wastewater and a utilities mechanic for our distribution collection team.
Okay. All right.
You say 2 engineers?
Excuse me?
You say 2 engineers?
Yes.
On the CIP, this type of question, that's right. So it looks like the hydrant program, and the valve program are the only 2 that have like every single year. I know we did the hydrostatic flow or whatever, I'm using the wrong term, the hydrology in Creedmoor.
Mhm.
And we had talked about doing more hydrology, but on the metering or the hydrant replacements. Do we have the fire flows and all the pressures and all those in our GIS? That's an ongoing project, right?
That is correct. So you're talking specifically about our water distribution schedule 102. And we have programs basically for water line replacement, hydrant replacement program, valve replacement. And those sit outside our hydraulic programs
Okay,
and our other service programs that we have in coordination. So they're specific to making sure our teams have the resources to put programs together. And that's really the nice thing about this schedule is that what we're trying to design here, obviously, is that we don't just have 1 year or every other year that we put some money towards a hydrant or valve program.
Mhm.
Once we identify these assets that need to be repaired or replaced, if you have funding for them on a schedule or a program, which you have here, you can say, well, every year we're going to do 5 or 10 or 1/5 of the total, and you can actually work towards replacing your assets on a schedule. That's what your 10-year and 15 and 20-year programs are for. So this is a really good roadmap for us. This will develop over the next couple of years as it gets refined as well. But again, it's a great starting point, and also helps us identify some of the items that are sitting years out that the board needs to be aware of: water tower replacement, clear well replacement, large projects that are out there that we have to be thinking about. And this will really come into focus as we get into finance meetings and budget meetings and talk about the I-85 project. So thank you. Anything further? Any other questions on CIP?
Anything? Okay, any comments, any further comments?
I think that I would just like to, as far as the executive director comments here, just thank Richard for what he put together for us this evening on the budget amendments and helping me with the CIP and the legislative documents, as well as Crystal for putting together our agenda, doing our board secretary work. And thank the board as well for their support on this last week. Quite the heavy workload, but I just want the board to rest assured that we'll get those resources in place and keep moving forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comment from our attorney?
no comment.
No, nothing for closed session. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. And now comments from our board members. Mr. McCallum,
No comments.
Mr. Wade,
No comments.
Mr. McLean,
No comments.
Mr. Karen.
Nothing tonight.
Ms. Kaczynski. And with that, I don't have any any comments and like to thank you for coming. And if there's no further business to come before the board, we entertain the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Having motion, do I hear a second? No discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, ayes have it, motion carried.